Ma'am, we are live now. Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I've never used Zoom before. This is new for me. I'm used to using
Yes.
Google Meet.
So,
This is a new experience for me.
good evening, Mike. Nilima Chandiramani here.
Good
We are
evening.
very we are very happy to have you with us. Welcome to India. Welcome to Mumbai and to our colleges.
Well, happy to be here today.
Thank you.
It's the wee hours of the morning over here in Canada right now. It just hit 6:30 a.m. over here.
Oh,
I've been up since Saturday.
Really sorry to bother you so early. Yeah.
Oh no, it's okay. It's good to get up early every once in a while. It's healthy for you.
Enjoy your cup of tea. Don't worry. We have 5 minutes.
Oh, that's good because I'm not a coffee. It's always tea for me.
Oh,
Never the. So I have I put together a slideshow.
okay. So meanwhile, we will make you share the screen. Principal
Yeah, I can do.
Balaji, yeah, let us see, because screen sharing takes some time. So please enable him to share the screen.
sir can share the screen now, ma'am. We enabled him.
Enabled him.
Yes,
Should I
yes,
see
ma'am.
share it
Yes.
now?
Yes, yes.
Fine. Dabral, will you please introduce?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good evening to all the participants and the dignitaries. This is Professor Samrita Rabral from Nari Gursahani Law College. It's an honor to be introducing our next guest for the technical session 4, Michael Ensor. But before I introduce Mike Ensor, sir, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Mike Ensor, sir, on behalf of Nari Gursahani Law College and Bombay Teachers Training College. We are very happy to have you here with us, sir, today for this event, this faculty development program on social construction of gender. A quick little information about the speaker for the day. Michael Ensor is a Canadian educator living in Ajax, Ontario. Born in North York, Ontario, he grew up in Scarborough and Ajax. His parents emigrated from Birmingham, England in 1967. He had a typical Canadian upbringing mixed with some traditions from England. Throughout his childhood and into his teens, Michael demonstrated a keen interest in arts, particularly music and creative writing, and sports, particularly soccer. He attended York University, where he received degrees in Bachelor of Arts and Education. For the past 20 years, Michael has worked as a teacher for Toronto District School Board, that is TDSB. He works with students from kindergarten to grade 8, that is 4 to 14 years old. In addition to teaching, he is the school chairperson, technology lead, school librarian, and chair of a number of school committees. In recent years, his professional focus has been on teacher leadership and equity within schools. He is currently waiting for promotion to an administrative role within TDSP. Sir, we welcome you to this International Faculty Development Program. And now I invite Mike Ensor to kindly start the presentation on the topic social construction of gender. Sir, please, over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I was having a hard time looking at what I was going to do for today. So I've got a presentation, a slideshow that I'll put on, and then at the end of it, we'll field questions that anybody might have as well. So let me just share the screen, and you have to forgive me. I'm a new Zoom user. This is a new experience for me. We'll make sure this works very well. If you have any questions, maybe we can hold until the end just so I can get rid of the screen as well, and then we can hold until the end. So here we go. All right, everybody can see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. This is the bit.ly right here as well. If you wanted to access this slideshow, you can type this into your web address and you can access this slideshow yourself as well. So when I was asked about this, I didn't quite know which way to approach this to begin with. So when I'm thinking about gender roles here in Canada, I decided to approach it in two different ways. Number one, my own experience with gender roles here in Canada, and just some other data that you can quite easily find if you have the time, just about what's going on in Canada as well, just in terms of some Canadian organizations, what they say about gender roles in Canada as well. So just a little bit about myself. There's a lovely picture of me and my wife right there. I'm in my mid-40s, as was said in the introduction. My parents immigrated to Canada in 1967. I do have an older sister, and I've grown up in the Greater Toronto area most of my life. I attended York University, where I got a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Education. And I've been teaching with the TDSB, the Toronto District School Board, for 19 years now. The Toronto District School Board is the largest school board in Canada. I'm an avid reader, movie watcher, and video gamer, and I love to watch ice hockey and play soccer. So when we were talking about who influences gender roles, the three areas I wanted to talk a bit about today was family, friends, and media. Now, my two biggest influences obviously are my parents. My father, growing up, he was initially the only source of income in our family. Just like most of British men at the time, had the British stiff upper lip. He didn't demonstrate very much emotion. He did the majority of manual labor around the house, lawn care, plumbing, carpentry, the stuff like that. He imposed the majority of punishments. I had the typical upbringing of wait till your father gets home if I ever got into trouble. He was very strong in mathematics and science, always helped my sister and myself out with the math and science homework. A big sports fan, and he was a bit conservative. My mother stayed at home, was a stay-at-home mom until I was about 11 years old. When she did get a job, she worked as an office assistant with the TDSB. She was more apt to show emotion, and she did the majority of housework, the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry. She was highly involved in my and my sister's schooling, and she was a little more liberal than my father. So I guess you could say my parents did have the very typical gender roles when I was growing up. My sister, my parents were a little more strict with my sister. I think that had more to do with her being the first child rather than her being female compared to me, male. Only required ever to do a few chores around the house growing up. She was involved in sports. She did 1 year synchronized swimming, and that's it. Growing up, she played with the typical things that girls did in Canada. She played with her Barbies, her Cabbage Patch Kid dolls, the Easy Bake Oven, what we would consider typical kids' toys, but girls' toys. Majority of her friends were girls, and when she got older, her education focused on the sciences. Myself, when I was growing up, I think my parents afforded me a little more freedom being the second child. I was given a lot of regular chores to do. I had the lawn care, snow shoveling, house repairs with my father. I was encouraged from a very young age to compete in sports. Ever since I was about 4, I've been doing sports up until my late teens. I continued to do sports. My toys growing up as a boy were G.I. Joe, Transformers, toy guns, bicycles. Majority of my friends were boys, and majority of my education was focused on the arts. There was always a joke in our family amongst our friends that my parents might have raised us a little more liberal because there was a switch. Usually people thought typically that girls went into the arts and the boys went into the sciences, and there was a flip between my sister and myself, which was interesting. I think a big thing to mention in terms of my idea of gender roles is when my mother began working as an office assistant, she worked in a guidance department of a high school. During that time, she was regularly exposed to teenagers who were facing great difficulties due to their identity, such things as their gender identity. And this exposure led my mother and eventually my father somewhat to holding much more liberal views about gender roles. By our late teens, both myself and my sister were comfortable with inviting gay friends to our house without any need to hide their gender identity from our parents. In fact, at my dad's 50th birthday party, 2 of my sister's good friends who were both gay, and one was gay and one was lesbian, were at my father's 50th birthday party. So you could say that my family had very liberal ideas of what we considered gender roles. Growing up as a child, majority of my friends were male until I went to high school. Like a lot of boys, I often played with more violent games. I played war, pretend shooting, sword play, that kind of thing, which wasn't discouraged by my family, by my parents. My family and my friends were always supportive of my endeavors in sports. However, when I was a kid, I was involved in a lot of arts, And that was a source of bullying when I was a kid. I was picked on by my friends over my artistic interests, particularly when I was in acting on stage for 2 years. So there was a great deal of pressure not to be involved in sports. It was considered more of a female endeavor, not a male one. And majority of my male friends growing up were more interested in success in sports over success in their studies as well. So a lot of my friends growing up, the indicator of success wasn't your grades, it was how well you were doing in your sports activities. My current friendships, most of my friends are still male. When we get together, we rarely discuss personal relationships or personal matters. And it's very common here in Canada, when guys get together, we resort to teasing each other a lot. There's always a lot of fun, friendly teasing about things, nothing that we're going to be hurtful over, but we always tend to do things where we get together and, we make fun of our age and, what we're wearing, things like that. It's always very cordial, but that's a very common thing here in Canada right now. So just a little background on media. One of my teaching focuses over the past few years has been teaching children media. So I tend to focus a lot on how media influences children and what it can cause over a long period of time when kids are exposed to media. So in media, we've got the three forms of media. We've got informative, we've got persuasive, and we've got entertainment media. The vast majority of entertainment media here in Canada does come from the United States. Our media, and we don't have a very strong media presence here in Canada. There is a law about it. I'll talk about it a little bit in a second, but the majority of our media, entertainment media, is from the United States. So there's a lot of influence there. Our informative media, so our news, the encyclopedias and magazines, is a mix of Canadian and US and some international content. Canadians in general are much more informed about international news than our friends down south. And persuasive media, so our commercials and advertisements, things like that, is a mix of Canadian and US content. Here in Canada, there is laws that require a certain percentage of all media sources to be partially written, produced, and presented by Canadian artists. So we do have to have that influence. So there is some unique Canadian aspects to the media here in Canada, which will inform gender roles. Growing up, as you can see, these were my heroes in the media growing up, my male heroes. There was a very distinct difference between media for girls and media for boys when I was growing up. The media for boys was often very violent. It was always good versus evil, and meant to sell products. So things like Transformers and G.I. Joe right here and here were just 30-minute commercials for toys for boys. The media for girls growing up was about relationships and feelings. Conflicts were solved through working with others, nonviolence. But again, the media for girls was meant to sell products as well, things like Cabbage Patch Kid dolls and Barbie and My Little Pony. Typical male characters growing up, that my male heroes were always muscular, always violent, usually invincible. They could, take on an army and come out unscathed. And the typical female characters were young, attractive, and unfortunately in need of a male to either save them or as a source of happiness. So the girls were never happy unless they had their boyfriend or their Prince Charming. Today, media, I've got a daughter, so I get to, see all the media that she's watching. There's little to no distinction in media aimed at children between boys and girls media. It appeals to both genders. Although when you look at toy commercials and things like that, there is still a use of color to distinguish between boys and girls. So if you look at the commercials over here, they always say that blue is a distinct boy's color, pink is a distinct girl's color, and that's used to sell products. Even the kids that I teach as young as 4 associate, when they see the color pink, they say that's a girl's color, or when they see the color blue, that's a boy's color. So that's still used today to decide which is a boy and which is a girl, I guess you could say, or what's supposed to be attractive to a boy and a girl. Children's shows don't sell products very much anymore. This is likely due to the fact that kids over here, actually kids around the world, are exposed to media at a much younger age now. We have all our kids, they've got their tablets, they've got their internet. So they're seeing media at such a young age now, they don't need to use television shows to sell products to kids anymore. The typical male characters here that we see now. still muscular and violent, but no longer invincible. They can take a bit of a beating now. And one thing I've always noticed as well is when you're talking about family roles that you see on TV, if there's a father being portrayed, they're often seen as dull and less skillful than the mother. They're always often used as comic relief. You don't often see a successful father who's a good father, who's good at raising their kids. They're usually the butt of the jokes when it comes to raising children. Men are in the media are always often portrayed as someone who can't raise a child without a woman being around. The typical female characters, they're usually romantic leads in need of a partner. You still see that today. Women need their men, they keep on telling us. There's the rise of the female-led action movies, like right there, we've got our Captain Marvels and we've got Rey from Star Wars now. So we're starting to see a rise in stronger women in the media. But most films still fail what's called the Bechdel test. I'm not sure if any of you know that. This is a test they do for movies that says that there has to be a point in a movie where two women who talk to each other about something other than a man. So a movie where two women are able to say something and talk to something where it's not involving a man, and most movies still fail this. So most movies, even with female leads, are somewhat about men. When it comes down to what we're seeing in the media as well, it's more common to have an average looking man and in roles than average looking women. So you can see sometimes we have men that are in the movies right now that are very average looking, or even you would be considered ugly. But women are much less likely to get roles if they're considered average looking, or also women are not getting roles over 35 and 40. So in popular media today, they're always young and they're always attractive. There's not very many older role models for girls in the media right now. Here in Canada, Canada's a very liberal country. One thing I hear very often here in Canada is the typical Canadian conservative has much more liberal views than most liberal Americans. We've had same-sex marriage since 2003. In 1996, Ontario courts ruled topless women in public was not considered an indecent act under the criminal code. Media channels are more likely to censor violence than nudity here on public television. The women's suffragette began in 1918 and ended in 1925, except for Quebec. And Canada is very multicultural. We don't tend to ask people who come over to Canada, we don't want them to become Canadians, just they are still considered to have their own unique identity from the country they came from. We're not a melting pot. So if people who come over here from Mexico, they're still considered Mexicans. People from India are still considered Indians. Canadian comes second. We celebrate diversity. We celebrate multiculturalism here in Canada. There is some problems that do still remain though in terms of gender. One of the big ones that they talk about a lot now, it's called the pink tax. This is where the women here in Canada, they end up paying on average about 43% more for similar products and services, such as razors, deodorants, soap. So, if you go into a store here in Canada, a department store, and you see razors, the blue razors for men, the pink razors for women, those pink razors are on average much more expensive than the men's razors, even though it's the same product, it's just a different color. And one is advertised towards women. Toxic masculinity still exists. There's still a practice here in Canada where men are supposed to suppress their emotions, maintain an appearance of being tough, and often use violence to demonstrate power. And the big one, of course, is there's still a gender wage gap here in Canada as well. On average, women are paid 87.7 cents to every dollar a man is paid. A significant contribution of this, though, is due to the parental leave here in Canada. We do have paid parental leave in Canada, but it is not equal. Maternity leave for women is up to 35 weeks at 55% of salary for $435, maximum $435 a week. So they can take quite a bit of time off for child rearing. But paternity leave is only 5 weeks at 70% of salary. So there's a big difference there, and it causes a lot of inequity in terms of how women and men are treated in the workplace. I've got a few stats here that you can look at. I apologize for how blurry they are. These come from Global News. I believe this one comes from. This is a local news channel who released a study just about a year ago on gender identity here in Canada. So what they did is they asked some typical questions about who does what around the household here in Canada. So this is 2017. So if you have a look, this is showing which tasks here in Canada are shared equally among the men, or if they're men and women, sorry, and which ones are maybe not shared so equally. So doing the dishes, grocery shopping, and organizing the household social life is pretty much even here, 50-50 roughly. But if you have a look down below, obviously tasks that are still mostly done by women are the laundry and meal preparation, so cooking and cleaning, and mostly done by men is the outdoor work and repairs, which is very reflective of my life growing up as well. It still hasn't changed that much. Household chores depends on who's in the labor force as well. So these are 3 typical household chores here in Canada. And if the men and the woman were both in the labor force as well, so both the man and woman were working. So for meal preparation, 26% is equally shared between spouses. 38% is equally shared between, for sole owner, when the men are sole earners, and 38% is equally shared between spouses or partners when both were working. For laundry, 64% mostly done by women when men were sole owners, and 55% mostly done by women when both spouses or partners are working. And the bookkeeping and bill payments as well, 48% mostly done by men when they were sole earners, and 31% done by men when both spouses or partners are working. So you can see there's still some disparity going on in gender roles here when it comes to what's being done at home. There is some other data out there. This comes from the Huffington Post. Up to 70% of women are still seeing inequity in the workforce. Nearly 73% of women still feel they're expected to become wives or mothers, so they're expected to have a family, as opposed to Canadian men who are their main expectation is to become the source of family income. So there's pressure on women to start a family, and there's pressure on the men to be successful in their job. In the workplace, the majority of men who expressed, this is a big one, in the workplace, the majority of men who express strong opinions are perceived as strong and confident, but women who do the same thing, 82% are perceived as being aggressive and overbearing. So even though they're doing the exact same thing, they're looked at and perceived as being very different. Women spend on average 1.5 more hours a day on unpaid care. So stuff they do around the house, volunteer work, and raising children as well. And that's from the Huffington Post, and I believe that was this year that this study was done. Now, this also comes from Global News as well, about the treatment in the workplace. This is a big thing that's been going on in Canada right now. This started, I would say, before we had the strong social movement that's going on in North America and throughout the world right now with Black Lives Matter, which is also tied into gender equity as well. The equal treatment in the workplace, 43% of Canadians agree that they think that Canadian workplaces treat men equally. But if you have a look, 54% of men think men and women are treated equally, but only 32% of women. So there's still a disparity there on how women believe they're being treated compared to how men believe they're being treated in the workplace. In terms of achieving equality in the workplace, 71% of Canadians agree that equality won't be achieved unless men take action to support women's rights. Most women, 77%, think that men have to take more action to support women's rights, but only 66% of men think they have to take action to support women's rights. So there's a bit of a difference there. This I found very interesting as well, and I know this. I've seen this as well, and because in my job, I am in an employment that is highly dominated by women. So I have a bit of a unique view in terms of employment here. But having childcare, so this is the difference between the perception of what can damage a career and what actually can damage a career. So in the workplace, women believe that having childcare responsibilities, 38% of women believe that can damage their career. 36% of women believe that rejecting a colleague's advances can damage their career. And 29% of women believe prioritizing family over work can damage their career, as opposed to those very low numbers, around 6 to 7% of men. And in terms of what actually happens is here on the right, sorry, excuse me, I have a bit of a cough there. Childcare responsibilities have affected almost half of women in terms of what goes on in the career, but only 25% of men, only a quarter of men feel that having childcare responsibilities has affected their career. And 38% of women have found that rejecting a colleague at work has affected their career, while only 8% of men. And prioritizing family over work, again, 45%, nearly half of women say that has damaged their career compared to only 28% of men. And a lot of people believe that can go back to the maternity leave, the parental leave that I was mentioning before. And feeling confident about calling out sexism or harassment at work. This one we're fairly equal at the beginning. Men and women both feel comfortable telling off family and friends who make sexist comments and telling off a junior colleague who makes a sexist comment. But when we get down to these ones here, confronting a man who's harassing a woman in a public place, women don't, only just over half of women feel comfortable doing so. And 3/4 of men feel comfortable doing so. And telling a senior colleague who makes a sexist comment, whoops, sorry, my screen just went blank for a second there. Half of women feel comfortable, where 60% of men feel comfortable. Now, I don't know if Zoom will allow this video to play audio as well, if you're going to be able to hear the audio. I'm going to turn up my mic here and see if you guys can hear the audio here. Hopefully you can. This is a short video from the magazine called Maclean's. Maclean's is a Canadian magazine focusing on Canadian issues. And this was about the pay equity gap here in Canada that's still going on today.
Do you remember when you first learned that women statistically make less than men? I think I've always known it. I don't think I do. I feel like it's a known fact, like we know the sky is blue. Probably would have been in university when I started signing other people's paychecks. Childish innocence. You assume everyone's getting what they deserve. I can't think of a time when I did not know that women make less than men on average. We kind of grow up knowing things aren't quite equal. It's still a problem, and it's always been a problem.
And I am much more concerned about what we're going to do about it than why it's happened.
But hopefully it is a reality we can actually change, because it's one we created. I went to university, played soccer, and then after that, I've been a full-time soccer player. Yeah, just the scale right now, unfortunately, internationally is totally different. If a men's team qualifies for a World Cup, they get, give or take, around $10 million. If a women's team wins a World Cup, they get $2 million that goes towards their federation, and that's all coming from FIFA.
I overheard once someone saying, "I'm not going to put her on a file. She just got married. She's going to go and get pregnant." These are things that are still said in the workplace.
I mean, I remember having guys that I work with that were my colleagues say to me, "Well, the only reason that you've been appointed to cabinet is because you're a woman."
It's so societal. Like, at this point, we need some real change when it comes to how genders treat each other and how they value each other.
A lot of the excuses that people make around the gender wage gap or around differential treatment of women or men tends to be around this idea of meritocracy, where they say whatever the outcome is, it's just because of pure talent. All of those excuses around meritocracy don't recognize the fact that we have a system that doesn't see women's contribution to the economy as valuable.
We tend to devalue the feminine. There's work that shows that when a job becomes overwhelmingly women, all of a sudden that job starts paying less.
As much as everyone likes to say, well, I like to work because I love it, it's not about the title, it's not about the money. Money is the collateral, it's the exchange, it's the value you're given for what you're doing and your contributions to work. So it's important to understand what your value is.
There's absolutely no reason at that point that men should be making more than women when they're delivering the same quality work. There are provinces that have pay equity legislation. There's pay equity provisions at the federal level. I think everyone would argue we haven't done enough, but I think the other thing that we should argue at this point is that it's not working. Even in provinces where there is legislation, we're still seeing
the numbers aren't changing. In fact, we now see from latest StatsCan reports that it's actually going backwards. We're also too satisfied looking just at how much men are making versus how much women are making, when the reality is women who are Black, who are Indigenous, who are disabled, newcomer, these women are all making a lot less. So we're missing a lot of nuance by strictly talking about gender.
Whenever you have somebody with power over someone else, it's a dangerous situation, whether it's a difference in gender, in race, in faith. Like, we have to make sure that people are recognized for what they are and that we're given equal place.
What research shows is that the gender wage gap actually emerges primarily through the fact that women, after the birth of the first child, end up changing careers or changing jobs because, again, they are the ones expected to do more of the childcare, to be more flexible, to do pickup after school. If we could fix one thing, having more equal participation at home for men and women would actually change the wage gap equation more than almost anything else we could do.
Maybe it's not a big, scary policy discussion we need to have for 3 years before we figure out how to do it. We know how to do it.
I think we've broken through this kind of veneer of everything's okay.
But we're kind of in this unique position where we have more of a platform than ever to do something.
An incredible example of someone I admire is Mark Benioff. It wasn't about why the pay gap was there. He just said, this is not the society of the future, and I'm going to fix it. And he literally took out a red pen and he righted the wage gap in his company.
I found it really interesting looking at what some other countries are doing. Australia has a more transparent regime, so they're asking private sector companies in particular to start reporting if there is some sort of a pay gap, and what does it look like, how are they addressing it.
I actually think that it's really policymakers, leaders, corporate managers and people like that who are the ones who are going to have to change.
You need to look at the data first. You need to confront the data. You need to accept that there are inequities in your organization before you can do something about them.
I don't want to put the burden on young women to fix the problem. We can't expect to say there's a gender wage gap and then expect women themselves to fix it.
They do need you. It's not about, they're not hiring you for anything but your skills, because that's what they want in the role. They're not business is not a charity. They're hiring you because they think you're going to do a good job.
Hopefully you guys were able to hear all that. Thank you for that. My part of the presentation. I'm going to put it back onto the bit.ly to begin with, just so you can see that in case you want to get this slideshow yourself. And then I wanted to leave a bunch of time for questions as well, because I wasn't sure how many questions people wanted to ask as well. So again, here's the bit.ly. If you type that into your web address, you can go through this slideshow at your own leisure as well. Let me stop the sharing. Here we are. Hello, everybody again.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. It's interesting to consider the gender identity here in Canada, especially for me, because as an adult now, I'm in a female-dominated profession, being an elementary school teacher. So I think I have a bit of a unique perspective on gender identity, just because I'm surrounded by female professionals on a daily basis. I do know for a fact that primary school teachers here in Canada are paid less than their high school counterparts. And that is mainly due to the fact that the secondary school teachers is a male-dominated profession, and the elementary school teachers are a female-dominated profession. So we tend to get paid a little less because I'm in a female-dominated profession. And even though it is a female-dominated profession, most of the administrators in an elementary school are still men. So there is some work to be done with getting women in positions of leadership and positions of power within the school board as well. And that's both good for the schools and good for the students, because we have a lot of girls now. There's a push to get more of our girls into the sciences. That was happening for a while. We're still seeing that girls, when they get up to high school, are dropping out of the maths and the sciences and going towards the arts. So there's still a push to try and get more girls to focus on those sciences as well, because we need that equity in terms of those tech positions as well in the future. But my own experience is, growing up, it's been a big change from my own experiences growing up to where things are now. My school board in particular has been spending a lot of time looking at equity and implicit bias and how we treat kids based on our own experiences. So there's a big push now to ensure that people like myself aren't putting our own identity onto our kids and onto our students, and making sure we're giving them the opportunity to explore things on their own and to, in a sense, find their own identity without us influencing them in any poor manner. So there's a lot of push right now within our school board to make sure that every child has their own voice. So we're starting to see things like gender identity being discussed even as young as kindergarten. So in the past, that would be something we wouldn't have talked about, but now we are focusing on picture books and activities as young as 4-year-olds, talking about things like homosexuality, about gender identity, about what what it means to be a girl and what it means to be a boy, and how it's not as distinct as once thought, and that girls can do the things that boys like and boys can do the things that girls like, that it's not as rigid as I think it was traditionally in the past as well. Has anybody got any questions? I'm not sure if I've covered everything you wanted there.
Yes, sir, there are a couple of questions in the chat box. Yeah, if you wish, I'll read it out to you, or if you can, if you want, you can read it and answer, or if you say, I'll read it for you.
No, go read it for me. I'll see it.
Yeah,
as long
sure.
as the connection's good,
Yes,
I should be able to respond.
Yes, sir. So the first question is, once we enter school, we unlearn our learning of gender roles in the family. The media has a huge impact on the social construction of gender roles. However, do you think that ultimately it is left to an adult individual to make an informed opinion on gender roles?
Oh, wow. I think that's difficult. In an ideal world, an individual should be able to make their own decision of gender roles. However, I think the media presence is just too strong. Like I said in my presentation, the kids are exposed to media now before they come to school. So you're talking about, as 2-3 years old, they're getting the tablet in their hands, they're watching videos on YouTube, and unfortunately, there's very little control over what kind of media is what's being put out there, especially in terms of kids' access to things like YouTube. So I think when kids come to school, depending on the parenting done beforehand, I think they're coming with at least the start of an idea of gender identity. I think that it's one of the things as an educator we have to be very aware of, is knowing what experiences kids are bringing with them to school. And we have to be able to identify them and unlearn, in a sense, maybe some of the poor teachings that media has taught them. So I wish that that it could be said that kids are forming their own idea of identity. I think that's not always the case. I still think that kids are often hiding their gender identity at times due to peer pressure and due to pressure in the media. Are we getting there? Slowly, but I don't think we're quite at the point where kids are feeling comfortable just opening up about their gender all the time right now. I wish it were, but no, I think the media still plays a very, very large role in informing kids about gender.
Thank you, sir. There's another question which says that, is there equal number of policy makers from different genders in Canada?
Wow, it's changing. Like in terms of education, I would say until very recently, it was very male dominated. We just actually filled 3 of the highest roles in the TDSB with Black females, which, you know, hooray, good for, it's good to see that happen. But as I said before, in a lot of the school boards right now, even in the female dominated elementary schools, the administrators are still male. I would say probably my best guess, I would say about 60 to 70% of the superintendents are still males. There's not very many females. And when you even go higher, and then you look at things like our school trustees as well, there's a mix of male and female, but still vast majority of them are male. There is a push and there is a change that is happening slowly, but it's, and you know, it's going to take some time. The nice thing is that there's data that has come out in the past few years that has shown the harm that having white males basically in charge of things like the school board and even in other government roles, how much harm that's been doing just having white males in charge of everything. So the data is informing decisions that are going forward now. So we're starting to see more people of color, more women that are being put in leadership roles throughout the schools and throughout the government as well. It's happening slowly, but it is beginning to happen.
Okay. So the next question is, needed to know something about the laws which are there in Canada, which you kind of check. Is there any law which checks on this unequal pay pattern which is there in the country? Are there any laws for this, you know, equal pay, equal work, that ways?
I'm not sure if there's any strict laws about it. I'm not sure how well I can answer that question. There's data that, as I said in my presentation, that shows that there is inequity, and there are channels which individuals can follow if they feel they are being paid inequitably. And so if they're doing the same job, let's say a woman is doing the same job as a male and they feel that they should be being paid the same amount and are not, there are channels that they can follow in order to, what do I want to say, try and get that pay equal. But I'm not sure if there's any sort of legal power that they have. It might be a civil rights issue, but I wish I could answer that question in greater detail. I know there is the push for it, but as you saw from that video, there are still high levels of inequity in terms of pay. The biggest of which are in things like professional sports right now, and there's social movements to try and get that pay equal, but I don't know if there's any legal ramifications behind it.
Okay. So there's another question. There's probably the last question in the chat box asked by our own principal. I think you answered that, but I would still, I think I skipped on that. So I would again want to take that question, whether male and female educators at Toronto district the same salary.
Oh, sorry. I think you got cut out there, but I think you're asking if male and female teachers are paid the same in the TDSB?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the pay that luckily, you know, since it is it's publicly funded education, all teachers are paid depending on just whether or not they're teaching elementary or secondary and how many years they've been teaching. So there is no change based on gender. So yeah, females and males are being paid the same in terms of you know, if a teacher who's an elementary teacher who's been teaching the same amount of years as myself, regardless of gender, would be paid the exact same. In most public jobs, that's the case. Private sector is a whole different ballgame, though.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. I think these were the only questions which were there in the chat box. I think there are no more questions to be asked. So I would just like to wind up the session. So thank you so much. At the start, when you started, you know, I was just wondering why you are giving the complete family history and all. And slowly and gradually, I realized, you know, the way it functions, you know, you were trying to depict from your family the whole thing, as in how the cultural system in Canada is. That was a very beautiful depiction, sir, I could understand. And thank you so much for the wonderful statistics. In a very limited time, you gave us, I mean, at least to me, the complete picture of how things are in Canada. And I was really surprised to know, we always think, that the western part of the world, they are more liberal. No doubt Canada is liberal, as you said, but when you spoke about all those things, I was a bit surprised. And I was wondering that, thank God I'm an Indian and I'm an Indian woman, because laws out here are so good, they're all for our benefit. And still I feel somewhere we women are always cribbing about it. So today all these sessions are really an eye-opener, where we come to know that how different parts of the world, when it comes to gender justice or gender, social construction of gender, there is, somewhere down the line, we as an Indian are at a very advantaged position. But thank you so much, sir, for bringing out all these small little things, in such a beautiful and meticulously you put it out in a such beautiful presentation. So on behalf of Nari Gursahani Law College and Bombay Teachers Training College, sir, I take this privilege and honor to thank you immensely for the wonderful information that you have shared. And I'm sure the participants would have got to learn a lot about, how things are, how social construction of gender in Canada is. So thank you so much, sir. And I think if there are no other questions, I would ask my principal, ma'am, to have the parting words. So thank you so much, sir. And I think if there are no other questions, I would.
So Mike, my special profuse thanks to you. You have been very accommodative, because you were the participant whose time I went on changing. Sometimes it was 4, sometimes it was 5, sometimes it was 4:30, but never once. Everything was okay for you. So my profuse, yes, my profuse thanks for that. And I really liked the way you presented, From morning, it was a typical presentation that we had, but it was unique. As my teacher summed up, I could immediately get it. Why you are giving about your mother, father, sister, brother. You have brought it out so well. From morning, we were told it's family, friends, and media. But the way you presented, I think that was very, very unique and impressive. So thank you very much for being with us, Mike. I would only like to do one thing. You gave us those slides with figures, what the Canadians think, men, women, What is your source? What is the source of that information?
I've actually, if you use the slideshow, there's some links right in the slides, which where the websites that I got that information from, so you can click on those links and get them.
Okay, it's some government source that you have given us.
Some of them come from an Ipsos poll, which is the government poll here in Canada, and a couple of them are from polls put together by some media outlets.
Okay, and I hope we will have our future interactions also.
Oh, I appreciate it. This was a great experience for me. I really enjoyed this.
Because of COVID, there are many disadvantages, but this has become a great advantage. Otherwise, I don't think we could have got you over here. But after hearing you, I would like that even in future we have certain interactions. And when times improve, we would like to invite you to India.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Thank you so much. And please do convey my thanks to Asima, because she's the one, yes, she brought us together, and it has been very beneficial and useful to us. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. You have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening over there.
I'm sorry you had to get up early today, early morning for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Even you have a very good day. Safe day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the parting word. Now,
Kathy Lewis is there, Sambita.
Yes, we can. Yes, ma'am, we can start. Yes. To all the participants, we are well in time, and I think we have summed up the technical session well in time. So I think we can start with the next session, the next technical session number 5, where we have with us the resource person is Kathy Lewis. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome to this International Faculty Development Program on social construction of gender. On behalf of Nari Gursahani Law College and Bombay Teachers Training College, I wholeheartedly welcome you, ma'am, to this particular platform to be sharing your knowledge and your knowledge with all of us. Before we can start with this technical session, I would quickly want our viewers, our participants to know something about the resource person. Kathy Lewis is an educator who has a heart for teaching and learning. She holds a BA English and Criminology, BEd in English and Law from York University, and additional qualifications such as English Specialist and Leadership Specialist. She is currently completing her MEd in Social Justice Education at OIES. She is also the co-founder of Revealing Magazine, which showcases Black excellence in all its forms and capacities, the first Black magazine available in the Android and Apple Store. She has been teaching for over 10 years with the Toronto District School Board. She is the curriculum leader for equity, student engagement and achievement at Scarborough Center for Alternative Studies. Driven by the urgent need for African history to be embedded in the curriculum, she has co-planned with educators, administrators, professionals, community partners, leaders, and advocates, designing and implementing classroom lessons and professional development workshops in support of Black student empowerment, leadership, and achievement. We are very happy to have you here with us, Madam Kathy Lewis. We welcome you once again to this platform, and I hand over this days to you. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. So I have a presentation that I would love to share.
Yes.
So can I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let me just go here. Okay, awesome. I see it now. Can I share my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let me just go here. Okay, awesome. All right, so can we all see my screen?
Yes.
Can you see the screen? Yeah, okay, yes. Awesome, good. So I'll just go from the top here, sorry. So I'm just gonna turn my camera off. Turn my camera off. Yeah, so maybe I should have. Okay, I'm just gonna stop sharing for just a minute and then I'll get back. Okay, so here we go. All right, so thank you so much for having me. So as our moderators mentioned, my name is Kathy Lewis. And so this is the title before I get into my presentation. So the title of my presentation is The Intersectionality of Gender and Black Death. So I will walk you through specifics in terms of how Blackness intersects with gender and how that complicates the experience as a Black person, or the lived experience or reality of Black individuals or people of African descent. So again, thank you. I'm extremely grateful and I'm extremely honored to share with your learning community. Thank you so much for having me again. So just to give you a brief backdrop as what Mike has done, I have my own here in terms of who I am and my experience, and the moderator has mentioned all of that. Again, I'm from a Judeo-Christian Afro-Caribbean descent. As the moderators mentioned, this is my 11th actually year teaching with the Toronto District School Board. Specifically, I've gone through so many different schools within the board. Right now, I'm working with the Scarborough Center, as the moderator mentioned. Thank you for that. And I am teaching English as my main focus. I've taught different courses with TDSB. So specifically, law, the social sciences, basically, and history courses. And right now I'm in the role of the equity advisor, again, at the Scarborough's Center for Alternative Studies. All right, so I like to share again, just to give us, an overview of who I am as an individual. So I'm not only an educator. So as Chimamanda Adichie mentioned, to say that I have a single story is to flatten my experience, right? So no one is actually monolithic in their experience. So while I do identify myself as a person of Afro-Caribbean descent, my identity is more complex than that. I am a mother, I am a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt. There's so many different roles, that I play, or hats that I wear as an individual. So what drives my practice as an educator? So I come from an equity lens, and I think this image here gives an overview specifically of what that means. So we have an image of, again, same image for all. So we have at a game, watching a football game. So again, a baseball game. So we have equality, there's equity, and there's the reality. So if we notice here on the screen, there is a barrier, right? So while all of the people here, or as spectators, get to actually watch the game, there are some individuals here who actually are barred, right? So while they do have access or opportunity to watch the game, they're actually prevented. There are obstacles, there are barriers, right, that prevents them from actually seeing the game live. And then there are others who are given a way more, or a bird's eye view of actually the game. So what this means, you can also apply this to the same idea in the classroom, where students are given the opportunity to sit in a class. However, not all students learn in the same way. Some students are visual learners, or auditory or kinesthetic learners. Some students are challenged by financial, racial, or social barriers, because for some, they're in the class, but their minds are elsewhere, right? So being elsewhere mean that they worry about maybe their financial situation. Maybe they're worrying about what's actually going on at home. Maybe they're worrying about the mere fact that they probably don't have maybe lunch or food, right? So there are, again, different barriers when we think about access to resources or access to information. Also, what also drives my practice is honoring student voice. I have a clip here that I'm just going to play for you. So this clip is from, was created by students at the Lester B. Pearson Collegiate Institute in Toronto, Canada. So I was one of the staff advisors for the Black Student Association. So these students actually created two skits in celebration of Black History Month. So our BSA students decided to write and to perform 3 skits that highlight their perspectives of what it means to be Black in Canada. So their skits highlight microaggression, the use of the N-word, and Black hair. So prior to writing the skits, the students decided to hold 3 panel discussions leading up to the performances. So 2 discussions were meant to showcase the male and the female perspectives. And then the final was for the students. So we've actually invited professionals such as Hadia Rodrigue, who is the author of Black on Bay Street. Hadia, in her piece or article, talks about her experience as a Black female lawyer working on Bay Street, which is a street or a prominent street in Toronto. Adia was also one of the speakers in the video that Mike shared as well, who speaks about gender inequality in terms of how females are represented, not only in profession, but also in the media. So I'm gonna play the video for you. So hopefully you can hear it.
What happened to your hair?
What do you mean? Is your cousin wearing my hair natural?
No, it's just that, like, before the break, you had texted this, no? Now it's shorter than usual.
Bro, she probably cut it.
This is why I can't be like, one thing, they look like one person, the next thing, they look like someone completely new. I swear to always play tricks on you. This is me off.
When I wear my hair in box braids or weave, it makes it easier to manage.
Hey, actually, can I touch it? Wow, okay. It's so soft and like bouncy, you know? I thought it was really hard.
Is it even real?
Nah, bro, that's impossible. Black people's hair can't grow that long.
Get your hands out my hair. Have you ever had a personal space?
Yo, here's the Cheetos, it's so thick.
Don't touch my hair. I can count on both my hands the amount of times people have asked me to touch my hair, and it's embarrassing. I'm not some kind of dog. My hair is my identity and pride. You need to respect that. When I come to school, I come for education, not to answer any of your questions of whether or not my hair is real or if I lay my edges down. Don't touch my hair. Yeah.
Okay, so again, that was a skit that was performed by students at the Lester B. Pearson Collegiate, at which I was a teacher and a staff advisor to the BSA. Okay. And they shared their experience, again, not only in school, but also in the broader Canadian society, where Black females are sometimes under scrutiny or examination. Specifically, it is Black bodies, right, that are oftentimes examined or as some sort of public scrutiny, where they're actually asking about the hair. The hair, again, looks as something that is strange, something that needs closer inspection, right? So the students capture that moment or experience. Okay. So the students capture that moment or experience. Okay. So the next that I have here is an image of an artistic piece or mural that was done by our students as well. So this here, the student shown on the screen, her name is Vanessa Pacheco. She shares, or she actually drew this piece in representation of our 2020 Black History Month Assembly. So specifically, sorry, I'm just trying to see if I can get, right? So specifically, this here is a representation of the billboard, the baobab tree in places which could be found in places such as Madagascar. This piece includes notable figures of Black History trailblazers such as Rosa Parks. So if we look closely at the image, and I'll just use my pointer so you can see. So if you look closely at the image, there is Martin Luther King there, that's represented on the tree. There is Rosa Parks, there's Viola Desmond. At the bottom of the tree, there are some other figures or images, right? And these figures or images actually represent the historical pieces, such as specifically the transatlantic slave trade, where people of African descent were actually taken over into America. So she actually captures all of that, but specifically in terms of triumphing. So she got her inspiration from Maya Angelou's poem, Still I Rise. Still I Rise there. Still I Rise. So the whole idea is that even though we've experienced the atrocities and the brutality of slavery, we see people of African descent, not only within the American context, but also within the Canadian context, rising, right? So rising above the violence, rising above the dehumanization, right? So she actually drew that piece as a way of capturing all of that. So as I said before, student success and equity are my two focuses, or focus areas as an educator. Okay, so going to the presentation. So what I'll be moving forward, what I'll be talking about is how Black bodies are pathologized, criminalized, and how gender complicates that experience and sheds light on the multiplicity of Black oppression. So I will not focus mainly on gender construction, but I will focus on how Black oppression or anti-Blackness is complicated by the individual's gender. All right, so I have another video here that I'm just going to play, and it's a 2-minute clip, again, of an interview with Martin Luther King and an NBC reporter, Vanacore, in 1967 at the Ebenezer Baptist Church.
What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are Black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land, or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its Black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. But it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression, and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading. As a result of all of these years of oppression, and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Okay, so that was, again, a clip from Dr. Martin Luther King in an interview with Vanacore of NBC. So King speaks about what happened after the Emancipation Proclamation that was signed in freeing the enslaved Africans at the time. But what was more important was that upon that freedom that was given, or so-called freedom that was given, these individuals were not offered any sort of economic base. They weren't offered any sort of reparation in terms of finance, where they can actually integrate with the mainstream society in terms of their own survival, not only survival, but in terms of their own humanity. So what happens as a result is that we see further disparity that takes place, because these people of African descent are actually pushed further along the margins of society, where they have to, and the dominant perception is that, you know, it's something that's innate, there's something wrong with them. Why is it that they're not achieving? and they're expected to pull themselves up from their own bootstraps. So the bootstraps analogy here is more so where it seems as if the onus now becomes on the people of African descent, or they are the one responsible for their non-achievement without taking into consideration the history of slavery and segregation, not only within the American context, but it's also very important for us to understand and to know that even within the Canadian context, slavery was very much a part of the Canadian society. People of African descent, again, even in Canada, right now are still marginalized. They are still overrepresented in a lot of areas. When we think about schools in terms of how Black students are actually pushed out of the education system because of the lack of representation. Specifically, Black history is not a part of, oftentimes not a part of the Ontario curriculum in terms of what students are learning. And because of that lack of representation, students are more disengaged. As a result of that disengagement, there isn't any sort of again, will in terms of staying in school. So they're basically pushed out of school. So I think it's also important for us to contextualize this, not just only within the American context, but also
what is it about
within the Canadian context as well. Right. So as I said before, so no economic base stemming from the legacy of slavery and segregation. There is this idea that Fanon, so Frantz Fanon speaks about, which is the corporeal schema that's crumbled. It takes its place taken by a racial epidermal schema. So what Fanon is alluding to here is that students don't, there is a sense where the identity is manufactured, and that manufactured identity is based on the idea of whiteness. So whiteness, specifically, not only in terms of the image of the individual, in terms of how the person see themselves, in terms of skin color, but is also a perception of world. So what's a part of the Black consciousness is not an understanding of Black history, but more so based on an understanding of white normative. So mainly most of what we learn has come from a Eurocentric point of view. So what happens here is that it forms a sense of something that is made up, something that is prepackaged. Not only that, then we move to the racial epidermal schema. In this, or this idea is based on the idea of the hypervisibility of Blackness, meaning that Blackness now, or Black skin color, becomes the marker, right? So the marker of not only everything that is not good or pure or true, but also the marker in terms of how you access and when you access service. We also see here again another quote that's on the screen from Professor Day, an indication of the saliency of skin color, but it also is a demonstration of how the immigrant is racialized and symbolizes crime, threat, and depravity. So continuing on with this idea of bootless economy, we see, as I said before, huge economic, social, health, and educational disparities. So again, income disparities even within the United States. So for every dollar of household income, so white household receive, the Black households receive 59 cents. The same income gap of 1978, which should have been the peak year of the civil rights policies and anti-poverty policies of the 60s and the 70s. And this was based on a study that was done by Harvard professor Williams of the public health department there. There's also further disenfranchisement of Black bodies, as what we see with COVID, what COVID reveals. So in America, of the 133,000 deaths, 23.6% of those are people of African descent. And this is a huge disparity because Black individuals represent is only 12.4% of the entire population. So they are 2.3 times as high as the rate of a white individual, right? So the pattern that we have seen for COVID-19, according to Harvard Public Health Professor David Williams and other health experts have echoed this similar data, is that the same we have seen for every major cause of deaths of Blacks in the United States for more than 100 years. So this goes back way, again, before even that interview that was done by Vanikor, including Dr. King, where he speaks about the economic disparity. And it's the same economic disparity that we're experiencing now in 2020. Right, as we see with COVID-19. Dr. Williams also talks about some of the underlying factors as a result of this. He mentions that where an individual lives determines where the individual goes to school. It determines the quality of education. It determines their preparation of higher education. It determines their access to good jobs. It determines the quality of neighborhood and housing conditions. It determines the exposure to physical, chemical, toxic substances. It also determines the quality of services. So as I said before, the data that I'm presenting is not only within an American context, but it's also within the Canadian context, because even though in Canada, we don't really collect race-based data in terms of the people who are affected by COVID-19, but we can also think about clusters of the virus, or clusters or areas that we see spike in the virus. And within these clusters or areas, these are communities largely of marginalized people or immigrant people. So what we can do or think about is that we can make an assumption of the impact of marginalized people, usually which are racialized and Black and brown individuals. Again, even though we don't see or have stats that speak specifically about how people of African descent or other racialized people and Indigenous people are affected by COVID-19 in Canada. In the US also, in many metropolitan areas, there is a 20 to 25 year gap in life expectancy from one neighborhood, right? So that's only a few miles away, right? So the person who lives within maybe a 1 mile radius of another person experiences greater exposure or predisposition, not only to poverty, but also to disease. Because when we think about the impact of any disease, usually, again, the predisposition is based on poverty, is based on inadequate healthcare and services, lack of access to proper food, right? And healthcare. All right, so in addition to that, there are migrant workers who are predominantly male, who are, again, predisposed to COVID-19. I am going to show you a brief clip, again, of a migrant worker in Ontario, Canada, who actually record his experience, his living quarters, like where he's living. Literally, that's an area that's actually cordoned off using cardboard boxes. So when we talk about the predisposition to COVID-19 in terms of the gender aspect or of that, we can think about migrant workers who are predominantly male, right? This is also a representation of the symbolic violence. So when we see the cardboard boxes, right, we think about the flimsy makeshift support and protection and spaces offered to workers, students, and by and large racialized and Black and Indigenous communities. So I'll play the clip here. Okay, so I'm just going to pause it. So that's just to give you an idea. Again, as I said before, the predisposure or exposure of migrant farm workers in Canada, not only in Canada, but we see this a similar exposure as well in the United States. Again, in addition to the non-protection that's offered to migrant workers, we see frontline workers and I'll speak specifically in terms of Canada, where a majority of people of African descent make up the gig economy. So and that includes females, right, who work women who work in nursing homes, women who work in the hospitals, women who work in industrialized areas who are not afford or cannot afford to socially distance, or even cannot afford to stay at home, again, because of the need, right? Most of them are living in multi-generational homes where, again, social distancing is difficult, right? There's also a Black transgender woman in her 50s who Maynard writes about, again, who fled her country of origin and did not have Canadian citizenship, right? So to support several family members, she worked as a sex worker, right? So just to give you an idea in terms of the extent of the predisposition, again, based on gender and specifically based on how people of African descent or racialized bodies are affected. There's also, when we think about the prison industrial complex, so 49% of prison inmates nationally are African American compared to their 13% share of the overall population. Nearly 1 in 3, so 32% Black males in the age of group between 20 and 29 is under some form of criminal justice supervision on any given day. So either in prison or jail or on probation or parole. As of 1995, 1 in 14, so that's 7% adult Black males was incarcerated in prison or jail in any given day, representing a doubling of this rate from 1985. And the 1995 figure for white males was 1%. A Black male born in 1991 has a 29% chance of spending time in prison at some point in his life. And the figure for white males is 4%, for Hispanics, 16%. This data is coming from the Sentencing Project. What this does is that it marks the beginning of the pathologization of Black boys, where in 2012, data from the Toronto District School Board found that 48% of Black children lived in families with incomes of less than $30,000 a year, compared to 9% of white children, right? So a rate which is 5 times higher, as well as almost 40% of white children in grades 7 to 12 had parents in management positions, a rate almost 4 times higher than that of Black children. So given the high propensity of poverty and exclusion, the impact of COVID in our Black community or on Black students is grave, right? So again, the data sheds light on the risk factors of a vulnerable population that is predisposed to COVID-19 as a result of their social location. And as I mentioned before, across Ontario, Black people are counted amongst the working poor, many of whom have lost employment as a result of the pandemic. And when we talk about the further marginalization as a result, we see Black boys who are heavily surveilled and readily linked to criminality. They're often pushed into sports or athletics rather than academics. Behavior now becomes deemed as violent or aggressive, right? Again, the burden of proof is shifted. So when we think about in terms of law enforcement, in terms of their interaction with the police, again, as what we've seen with the death of George Floyd, right? That stemmed from an encounter about a $20 bill, right? So George Floyd wasn't given the opportunity. He wasn't considered, again, as a person and as an innocent individual who, again, or he wasn't given the benefit of a doubt, basically. So he was interrogated, that resulted to, again, his death, right? As Maynard said before, when we think about Black bodies, and specifically Black males, again, their bodies are oftentimes approximate, right, for death. So there isn't any sort of boundaries or limits that are applied to Black bodies. Black females are sometimes tagged as loud or aggressive, as hypersexual, right? Again, as what we see with the transgender woman, the reference that I made about the transgender woman. Females are often seen as public spectacle or othered for examination, as what we've seen in the video performed by the students at Lesser B. Pearson. Okay, so it's a continuous lynching of Black males and females. So we see, this is a picture of George Floyd before his death. And there are countless of Black males and females who have lost their lives as a result of anti-Black racism. And I'll just quickly just share this again with you all so that you can see some of these individuals. So it's not only George Floyd, right? There's Breonna Taylor, died at the age of 26. Tatiana Jefferson at the age of 28. Right? There is Aura Roser, died at the age of 40. Stephen Clark, right? And this is just a tip of the iceberg. There's so many Black males and females who have lost their lives as a result. Philando Castile, 32, right? Alton Sterling, right? All these Black individuals who have lost their lives as a result of anti-Black racism, not only within the American context, but also within the Canadian context. In the Canadian context, most recently, this Black Indigenous woman who actually fell to her death from an apartment building in Toronto, Regis Korshinki Parquet, who lost her life as a result, right? Even though the case is still under investigation. So I'm just going to conclude my presentation with an analogy provided by Kimberly Jones. This was during the Black Lives Matter protest in the United States. So Kimberly uses the analogy of the game of Monopoly that again showcases centuries of brutality against Black bodies. I just want to also forewarn you that the video has profanity, but I feel that it's very important that we understand the extent, the lived experience, the lived reality, especially with the critique that actually came out of the protest, where there are a lot of people who considered the protesters as, you know, looters, and they're destroying buildings, and the destruction is unnecessary. Not to say that I am for the idea of destructing buildings, but I feel that it's very important that we actually move away from rhetoric that seek to not engage critically with the issue. So I'll play the video.
That economics was the reason that Black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything. And then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built Black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play, and every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play, and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you, and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the fuck do I give a shit about burning the fucking Football Hall of Fame, about burning a fucking Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a fuck. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so fuck your Target. Fuck your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what Black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
Okay, so that's Kimberly Jones, and she is one of the organizers of the Black Lives Matter protest in the US. So that concludes my presentation. So I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was a wonderful presentation, ma'am, made by you. again, I would say it was an eye-opener. No doubt, it was not touching totally upon our topic for the day, social construction, but definitely how we have this problem of gender, social, I mean, like the gender equality and the issues of gender throughout the world. The issue of black apathy is on the same, rather at a at a much graver level. This is there, and thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us on this one particular issue, which has always been there. And with the recent George Floyd's case, how this thing has once again come up. So thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, ma'am, where it was really thought-provoking, and I'm sure we were, I mean, at least I was very, very, very much attached to the screen, and I was trying to understand the problems of the Black people out there. So, ma'am, today we have here 2 questions at present. With your permission, can I tell you the questions? I mean, narrate the questions, and you can give the answers to that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. The first question is, ma'am, that is in Canada, is the burden of proof different for whites and blacks?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So when we talk about, so what we need to understand, so we have the laws, right? And the laws were created for everyone. If you're thinking about the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, again, that recognizes everybody, that also prides itself on Canada as a multicultural society. Canada, yes, absolutely is a multicultural society, but in terms of access, it is not, it's not a leveled playing field. So again, when we talk about burden of proof, you can also think about it in terms of a person's interaction, for example, with the police, right? So in Canada, we have racial profiling. So people of African, or not only people of African descent or Black persons, it's also any racialized. So it could be Black, brown, individual, right, who are mainly targeted by the police. So when I speak about the burden of proof, I'm speaking not so in terms of the court of law when you go in and you're trying to defend yourself. Absolutely, that's there. But I'm speaking more so in your daily interactions, whether it's a daily interaction with the police, daily interaction, as I've shown before, with our Black students in school, where they're not given the same treatment, again, and the data is there to prove it, right? Black students are predominantly pushed, Black and racialized students are predominantly pushed, right, out of the school system. So the burden of proof, absolutely, absolutely, not only within the law itself in terms of representation in court system, whether a person is, is innocent until proven guilty according to the charter, but it's more so of being guilty, the assumption of guilt as a result of the hypervisibility of Blackness. So Black skin now becomes criminalized. And as I said before, gender complicates the process because Black males now are forced to interact, right, with the police differently than Black females, not only Black females, but also white males. So we see a huge disparity, again, based on that interaction. So that's what I meant by the burden of proof there.
Okay. Ma'am, the second question is, what kind of political measures Black community have taken to change government or politicians' perceptions towards Blacks? Can non-violent movement be the solution of problems faced by the Black bodies?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for that question. Now, I was very intentional in choosing to show Dr. Martin Luther King, because Dr. Martin Luther King was not only a civil rights icon in terms of pushing forward for change in the 60s, right, in the height of the civil rights movement in the United States. But King also was mainly a non-violent or actually pushed a non-violent sort of movement where he actually sees America, not only America, we're talking about the globe, around the world, people who, a society, right, a humanity where we can all share or live and live in respect, right, of everyone's differences, right? So again, absolutely. So that's Dr. Martin Luther King. We have the Black Lives Matter movement, and the Black Lives Matter movement is not about, it's also nonviolent, right? But it's a different way of actually pushing for social change. That's on the grand scale. When you look in schooling, for example, there are a lot of educators, right, who actually dedicate, right, their lives, services, in engaging not only Black students, but all students, racialized and non-racialized students, right? In building that critical consciousness of history, in building that critical consciousness of now, so that we all understand, right, the historical forces that are at play. Because without an understanding of history, then it's difficult for you to understand actually what's going on. What we see is just basically people just being rowdy, people looting and all of that, but we don't know where that is, what do you call it, stemming from. So that's the reason why we always, as educators, push for Black history to be taught in school, because the average person does not know, right? What we see is that, okay, why is it that, and again, going back to the question that was asked of King in the video, why is it that Black people are so complacent? Why is it that they are not achieving, right? But then there's a root cause of not achieving. And if we don't understand the root cause of that, then it goes over our heads. What we see again is the criminalization of Blackness, right?
Right. Well said, ma'am. Ma'am, another question is there any affirmative action plan for Black people as a constitutional norm in legal system of Canada?
Very good.
So in terms of the legal system and affirmative action, I think Canada takes direction more so from the United States. So even if there isn't any sort of policies in terms of law that are placed or are put in place to offer protection or access, right? Or to decolonize, right? The dehumanization that took place in Black communities. I think that there again, because the reason why I'm saying this is because in the US, we know of affirmative action. In Canada, it's the same practice, supposedly. Okay, and I'm going to qualify that. And the reason why I'm saying supposedly or qualifying that is because we have lots of, what makes racism real or anti-Black racism real is the lived reality and experience of the person. Because as we all know, that race is a construct. It was created as a result of the advent of imperialism and colonization. So what makes it real, right, is the lived experience and reality of people. So people, based on their lived, and I can speak based on my own too, I don't even need to draw on data. People can speak about their experience to not having full access to economic, financial resources, right? So when you think about services, right? When you think about the infant mortality rate, right? Specifically for Black children and Black mothers, right? We can also see that again in terms of anti-Black racism. But going back to the question of affirmative action, we see in certain policies that are put in place in, for example, in organizations where there is a representation, right? The quest is to offer representation in terms of a race, but at the same time, there is still a disparity, major disparity in terms of who access specific resources. So while I can't think of a specific policy or law that is put in place, Canada has a multicultural act, but that's just on paper. In theory, that's good, but we're talking about the lived experience of people, right? So yes, we can have something that's penned out, but then in reality, is that practical? Is that something that we practice? Canada prides itself on multiculturalism, but that multiculturalism for most people is not, it's far from the reality of their experience.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, I think this is the last question in line. Can you elaborate a little bit on gender equality within the Black community?
That's a very good question. And a very complicated question, because gender equality, yes, we live in a patriarchal, and we cannot ignore the fact that history plays a major role in terms of how we interact with each other based on gender. And the reason why I'm bringing history in, because as I said before, it's very difficult for you to understand if you don't really historicize, if you don't really go back and see what the roots or where this is coming from. But when we go to or think back to pre-colonial Africa, there wasn't much of disparities, right? In terms of gender, right? In terms of an actual male role and an actual female role. But we see the adoption of that as a result of colonization. So yes, there is remnants. We can say that there are remnants of gender disparities, but at the same time, there are also remnants of that female agency, right? That was brought down coming from pre-colonial Africa. So while there is a sense, you get a sense that there are certain specific roles that females play within that's also again based on, again, coming from pre-colonial. Let me give you an example, case to point. I grew up in a family where, with my mother, she was a very strong individual. All the females in my family, they take on that role. There wasn't a major difference in terms of what the males do or in terms of what the females do. My mother worked very hard. You know, she took care of the children. One can say that that's an assigned role, as we know, coming from the European patriarchal system. But at the same time, there was a level of agency that's there. So it's not that she was actually boxed in where, okay, this is your role and that's what you need to do. You stay home, you take care of the children, you make sure that food is, or dinner is prepared, you make sure that all of those stuff. No, she had her own power. She had her own agency where she had her own, business in terms of entrepreneurship. She took care of the household. She worked on par with my dad, right, who also played that role as well. So yes, we see that difference, but at the same time, as I said, when we think about pre-colonial Africa, we can also see remnants of female agency that's been brought down. So it's very much a part of us.
So that was the last question, ma'am. I think there are now no more questions. So I think, thank you so much, ma'am, for drawing our attention to this problem which Black people in Canada, they have. You emphasize on the problems of the marginalized community in Canada and US, and also issues relating to the migrant workers, the risk factors to which the Black youngsters are exposed to in this COVID situation. And the most important thing, if I can relate it to the topic for the day, is, that the Black women are tagged as loud, aggressive, and seen as a public spectacle. I mean, that is something which is, which is going to the core of the topic that we were having for discussion for this, for the International Faculty Development Program. Thank you so much, ma'am. I, on behalf of Nari Gursahani Law College and Bombay Teachers Training College, extend a very big thank you to you, Kathy Lewis, ma'am, for bringing out so many important factors. And it was really an honor to be hearing Sir Martin Luther King. We have always been, at least I have always been reading about him, and his speeches. And it was really a wonderful experience to be actually hearing him. And we could see the compassion with which all the videos that you had shown was really brilliant. And I'm sure all the participants would have learned a lot of things and a lot of takeaways that we have today after this brilliant session, which you have put up for all of us. Thank you so much, ma'am. And with this, I come to the end of this technical session 5. And I guess now I can hand over the program to Dr. Neelu Verma for the next technical session. Over to you, Neelu, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
Neelu, 1 minute. Can I
Yes,
just
yes.
come in for 2 minutes? Kathy, you were simply brilliant. I mean, I really enjoyed listening to you because you brought in a totally different complexion to the theme of today's faculty development program. You try to bring in racism, which is actually a social construct, and how the Black community is doubly marginalized, doubly discriminated. And the 2 videos that you have shown of Martin Luther King and Kimberly Jones, they were really heartrending, and both focused on the same point. That is, I don't know, this is a question that I'm putting to you, because as you said, we have to understand Black history to understand the root cause. Now, do you think the root cause is that because y'all are not economically independent, the Black community is not economically independent, because in Martin Luther's video, it was a mockery of freedom which was given, because there was no land, no nothing given to them. And even in the second one of Kimberly Jones, it was that it was 400 times the monopolization. So do you think in that case, if they are economically independent, the picture or the Black society would be something different?
Absolutely. 100%. I totally agree with you. Yes. Because again, when we think about who controls, because power, is who control resources, right? So when you have not only access to resource, but when you control, right, that the resource or resources, then again, you become less reliant, right, on any sort of provisions, right, from the government or from people in power, whether it's the government or the 1% that controls the economy. So absolutely, I totally 100% agree with that. But then, as what Kimberly also mentioned in terms of the monopoly, is that Black individuals have always been striving for independent economic independency, right, basically, right? But what happens here, because white supremacy is so prevalent and at times gets so sophisticated, always thinking not only about replicating that system, but also in keeping, so to speak, Black people in check. So what happens here is that there's always something or a form that takes place that actually destroys, right, what's been built, right? She speaks about Tulsa, right? She speaks about other, right? There was Black Wall Street and what happened there, right? The brutality that actually took place there. So absolutely, I do 100% agree, but I feel that that's also, it is also important for, again, when we're pushing for independence in terms of economic base, that is also important that we also think about ways of actually dismantling that system of oppression that seeks to replicate itself and that seeks to always coming up in opposition to Black achievement and Black success.
So since, this disparity exists, and you did show a slide of equality, equity, and reality. Okay, so though Canada claims that it is multicultural, but in reality, it is not so. But do they give you freedom of speech to talk, even in schools?
Yes. Well, absolutely, yes. So Canada, as I said before, I have to be very careful in terms of how I share or present the information so we understand, because I want us to get a strong sense of what it's like. Of course, we have, freedom in terms of being and living and all of that, but that's on the surface level. But when we move away from the surface level to the more, not only symbolic, but we're talking about the lived reality and the experience of the individual, it is not actualized, not for everybody at least. For me, I considered myself, even though I'm a Black woman, I also consider myself privileged, but not every Black woman, right, is afforded the same privilege that I have, right, as an individual. So yes, you know, there is a level of complicity in terms of my own, but also in terms of the different access to resources, right, that we see. So Canada does pride itself as a multicultural society, but again, it's very important that we critically engage in what that it means to be a multicultural society, and to what extent is Canada a multicultural society.
And Kathy, we can empathize with the Black community because even Indians are not fair-skinned. We are wheat complexioned thing, and we have been reading, I think even you may have read Gandhiji's autobiography of his life, and he has given us experiences of South African community, you know. So I think we have a lot in common, you know.
Oh yes, for sure.
Yes. And that's why a very big thank you on behalf of Nari Gursahani Law College and Bombay Teachers Training College. It was very interesting listening to you because you brought in a totally different complexion to our program today. Thank you so very much for being with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, over to Dr. Neelu.
Thank you, ma'am. I have the privilege of inviting our next resource person for the day, Professor Dr. Amir Bhaumik, who is the president and founder of Lincoln University College, Malaysia. Professor Dr. Amir Bhaumik holds a double master's degree in various disciplines like biology, culture, and psychology, and a PhD and international management. He is a founder and former vice chancellor and now president of Lincoln University College, Malaysia, which offers more than 95 programs, including PhDs and MBBS, in not less than 12 faculties. Lincoln University College has achieved 80th rank in world rankings under Times Higher Education Impact Ranking 2020, and this was under the category of quality education. Sir is a visionary leader for developing society via education and training. He's worked for many international organizations, and one of them was Ottawa University, USA. While working with international universities, he has gained various types of educational development work that includes writing policies and strategies of education for various countries. He has traveled all the continents of the world, and that includes America, Africa, Asia, Europe, Australia. Until now, he has traveled more than 108 countries around the world for his work. Dr. Amir believes in Abraham Lincoln's philosophy of providing education to each and every human being of the world. He also believes what philosopher Swami Vivekananda said, that each and every human being is a potentially divine being. Dr. Amir believes through education, we can help each and every human being to manifest their hidden divinity, power, strength, and scholarship. For him, work is worship. I welcome you, Dr. Professor Amir Bhaumik, sir, to share with us your thoughts and your take on the theme today, social construction on gender. Welcome, sir. Dr. Bhaumik.
Me? Can you hear me? Good evening.
Welcome.
Good evening, sir. Good evening. Welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Speak, sir. Sir Balani, sir. Yes.
Sure.
No, I am not speaking. I just said welcome, sir. We are privileged to have you as a speaker, and you are the role model, and you are our mentor, and then you have always blessed us by participating in all our programs, and you have always motivated all of us as an educationist to deliberate on the different topics. Now, today's topic is very significant as far as the faculties of law and education are concerned. Nari Gursahani Law College and Bombay Teachers Training College are privileged to have you as a resource person to speak on the topic social construction of gender. Sir, it is over to you now. We are eager to listen to you. Thank you, sir. Thank you being with us.
Thank you, Balanisha. Those who are within India, good evening to all of you. And those who are outside of India towards western side, it could be good morning, good afternoon. And those who are southeastern side, a very late good evening to all of you. And in India, namaskaram to everyone. Namaste, Dr. Nilimaji.
Good evening, sir. Very nice to see you and hear you again.
I'm pleased to see you as well.
I was highly impressed last time when I met you.
Oh my
so
gosh.
we have made a real right decision in inviting you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Dr. Nilimaji. Today's theme, the social construction of gender. It's a very important theme, not only in our university research area, but also in my personal agenda. Under United Nations, there are 17 SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, and number 5 SDG is the gender equality. And next year, in Times Higher Ranking Impact, we are participating in gender equality as well. So every year we try to change or try to take up certain theme which is based upon United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. Now, as we are educators, as we are university, so we need to create an impact to the society. And that impact should be a sustainable development goal. So United Nations have categorized 17 sustainable development goals. And SDG 5 is one of those, which gender equality. So you have chosen a fantastic theme today. Now, when we talk about gender, mostly coming between men and women. Mostly people will be thinking how we can do this. Now, traditionally, or you go back hundreds of years back, women in our society used to be revered, used to be treated like a respectable leader. But over the years and centuries, that trend has been changed and become patriarchal society. And because of this patriarchal society, now why this patriarchal society has come into existence? Why matriarch society could not flourish? Right now, throughout the world, only 6 matriarchic society is existing. 1 in China, 1 in Costa Rica, 1 in Indonesia, 1 in India, and 1 in Kenya, and 1 in Ghana as well. Now, why this matriarchal society is able to exist and rest of the world is patriarchal society. Now, this is where it comes nothing but the luster, the greed has evolved into these patriarchies. The luster and greed, when I say luster and greed, that women are not treated as equal human being. The woman is treated more like an object. And so as treated object, the patriarchic society, they do not look at the women as equal, rather as an object. And because of that object, the patriarch society has dominated throughout the world. And as patriarch society has dominated, that luster and greed has expressed not only in gender, but also in our daily living. And because that luster and greed had changed our lifestyle, and we have landed into conflict. No more harmony, no more peace. And this is why it has happened. Because as society evolves during the evolution process, the education, the knowledge impart has been evolved in such a way that it should be only with the patriarch society, and matriarch society is nothing but object, social object. Now, unless the patriarch society wake up, and which had started to wake up, that respect and reverence towards women. And that's exactly what Sri Ramakrishna said, that don't treat women as a sex object. Treat women like your mother, like your sister. That cultural training we need to keep on giving to our younger children. Then our society will be constructed. Not like a child grown up, late 20s, and then we are trying to teach them. It is too late. It needs to start from the day one. And every society, every countries in the world have some sort of philosophy, some sort of cultural training where infused to the younger children, not idealistic, rather practicalistic. In other words, the younger children, what they are reading today, it's not like memorization. We need to create a social construction role model so that they can follow. And that's what Charles Horton Cooley, a very famous sociologist, he said, children are good to have role play. And that role play, and he also said, we live in dramaturgical analysis, drama. The whole life, you and me, is nothing but drama. At home, mother has to play many kinds of role. Wife to her husband, mother to her children, wife, maybe sister-in-law, wife, then has to daughter-in-law to her. So many roles. And within that roles, the men folk need to be taught that, hey, we are not simply an object. We are part of the society who literally plays an important role. Then we can. Now, in our Lincoln University, we have pro-chancellor women, we have deputy vice-chancellor women, we have bursar women, we have dean women. Practically all women are holding leadership positions. Now, what need to have the patriarch society understand their importance, their roles? I was just listening to Kathy Lewis. What's yours? I have lived in Canada. I have lived in US. I have lived in South America. What she couldn't express too much, but I know what she was trying to say. Surface meaning that it is projected throughout the world. Yes, we are treating equally. But believe me, I have lived in this society. If the skin color is not pure white, it's a terrible, terrible thing to have. I have worked all this. So having said that the women leader, they have a big responsibility. They got to those leaders, few leaders are existing in the world. Indira Gandhi, she was killed. Benazir Bhutto, she was killed. So Margaret Thatcher. So those kind of leaders should be role model to teach our younger generation. That's the most important. But what is happening, the younger generation, we are not taking very interactive, very serious role that how younger generation could really just not memorizing, rather practice it. And that practicality, that practice of gender equality, how gender is important in our social construction. The human being is nothing but social animal. So, and social animal need to live in a group. And to live in a group, we must not create any kind of conflict. The moment we have a conflict, we tend to lose peace, we tend to lose harmony. So the social construction of gender equity is very important. And that's where I like Swami Vivekananda's, that each and every human being is a potentially divine. So let us think that the women gender, the patriarch gender, or in racial discrimination area, the between black and white, so-called dominant people need to understand that each and every human being is nothing but the potentially divine. And this philosophical, cultural education, we need to inject. Why I say inject? Because simply reading, memorizing, and passing, getting good grades, no use. So injection meaning that once it goes to the injection in our body, that means it is going into our blood. So that blood, that injection medicine then treat us very well. So what we are facing now, a big disease in our society, the gender discrimination disease. And that gender discrimination disease, it cannot be solved by simply this kind of conference. It cannot be solved by writing some papers. It cannot be solved publishing books. It cannot be solved just by Prime Minister, President giving talk, or just I am talking. No. It is our responsibility. It is you and me. We are the educators. We have a big responsibility in our life. Let's go back to the ground zero and we inject that there is no division, there is no inequality between men, women, between black, white, because we are all children of Almighty. There is no discrimination. The moment we start giving that kind of injection to our young generation, not simply book memorization. So that injection will go into blood, and that medicine will stay within the blood. As the children grow, the blood circulation will be nothing but equality, harmony, and reality. Then we can only achieve. But we can talk. Canada, US, they have fantastic policies. Government has policies. But look at what is happening in the US. And why it is like this. Trump today, why he's like this? Because he is not able to fulfill his luster and greed. His niece has written a book saying that how much is enough. This how much is enough. You cannot be teaching Trump now. Somebody should have taught him when he was 5 years old boy. But his father was equally nasty because his father did not teach him that way. His father was looking for money. So he grew up. So what it is required, that gender equality, it is not outside. It is inside. It is within our family. Family. I mean, if we have a son and daughter, we got to treat them together in the same level. So, friends, the gender equity, social construction would only happen. Let's go back to the ground zero. Look at our children, give them proper training and education. Hey, both of you are not different. Only the physical expression is different. Otherwise, we are all human beings. As Swami Vivekananda, one of his lectures, he said that, brothers and sisters, I am no different from you at all. You don't think I am an angel. I am like you. But what I am trying to do, I am trying to open my mind. I'm trying to realize myself. Who am I? Where I come from. The moment I'm trying to realize myself, then I don't see any differences between anybody. The moment we have that kind of injection to our society will become more egalitarian rather than authoritarian, rather than pen and paper democratic, but in practical reality, we are practicing such. And why we should do this as an educator, as we are running universities and colleges, why we should do this? That's because I always say that this world is a transit airport. So before we leave from this transit airport, let's create an impact to the society, that society look at us, that we came in this world to have a good social construction of gender where there is no discrimination between the gender, no matter what. It should not be any discrimination even based upon economics, based upon skin color, based upon religion, based upon anything and everything. We have to treat, we have to educate, we have to inject into the blood, hey, look, we are the same children of Supreme Almighty. There is no difference between Indian and Malaysian. There is no difference between Muslim, Hindu, Christian. There is no difference between white and black. This kind of role model of education keep on injecting to the younger society. And when we leave, these younger society, when they grow, they will become a fantastic egalitarian human being, and they will remember us that we did a wonderful job. So with this, I thank you to all of you, especially the Bombay Teachers Training College and the Law College as well, to inviting me to share of my personal opinion, that what I think about the gender equality. So we are here in this world for few years. Let's work together that how we can do a fantastic social construction by not having conflict of gender, of not having conflict between black and white. Thank you, and may God continue to bless us with our choicest prayers so that we can create an impact to the society. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir, for this wonderful talk. If I can quickly summarize it in a couple of minutes, I was deeply impressed by the fact that you mentioned that Lincoln University College has many positions, top positions where we have women leaders. Also, the highlight that this is time that we must ensure that our younger generation is made aware of the fact that the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, gender equality, should be actually practiced and brought to each home, wherein we should make them aware of women role models and women like, say, Malala Yousafzai, or maybe the ones who have made an impact and have left the world, Benazir Bhutto and Indira Gandhi. You also talked about the disease called gender discrimination and how an injection for that could be with us, with each of us. And this is not just this problem, this disease cannot just be solved by participating in conferences or books or talks, but then one needs to work on it at ground zero level. So each individual must take part in this, and that will be able to create equality and harmony. Also, I typically loved the way you mentioned that this world is like a transit airport, and it's important for each one of us to understand that before we leave from here, we must create an impact, and that impact can be this can be impactful if we live a life without discrimination. Sir, thank you so much for all what you've said. I have a couple of questions if I can pose them in front of you, sir.
Sure, please, by all means.
Yes. So there's a question Dr. Nilima ma'am has asked. Despite all good upbringing at home and a balanced education, how do we isolate our children from the negative impact of media? We've been talking a lot about how media influences our gender roles. So how is it possible?
That's what I said. It cannot be just one particular family. It needs to be injected overall, and we all have to work so that then media will realize, hey, I shouldn't be doing this. So if we don't do this at the, I mean, say, look at this, I give you an example, 9/11 cases. They did simultaneously to create an impact. So if we want to have such impact of not have gender discrimination, the entire society must take them on. Hey, look, we cannot be doing this. So the media personalities or the media owner, they should also own the responsibility. Hey, look, I should not project this gender equality. But if you and me only doing it, and we have billions of populations, they are doing something else, very difficult to control such cultural diffusion. The cultural diffusion is a very tremendous impact in our society. So what is happening? However, I wouldn't say that we should not teach our children because media is doing this. But we have to do that. I mean, I want to say there was a king and he told all the followers, look, I want this pond to be filled up by milk. So the followers said, look, everybody will pour the milk. So why not I pour the water? So then what happened? So overnight, king slept nicely. And next morning, when king went to the pond, he saw nothing but water. Because everybody thought everybody will bring the milk. So why not I take the water? So that mentality we need to change. That, oh, media is doing this, and therefore no point I teach my children. I have to do this. So when I start doing this, so as it goes, I agreed with Dr. Nilimaji what she said, that children, you train them, but media. But what happens, and Dr. Nilimaji, that what I have seen in my own life, that I grew up with the monastic missionaries. My childhood, monastic missionaries, I grew up myself. So as I grew up, now, of course, I'm quite young though, not yet old, but that cultural behavior, what I have received during my childhood, my adulthood, that one has gone into my blood. And no matter what happens outside of the society, no matter what media does, no matter how much greed and luster come in front of my head, it doesn't affect me. So what I would like to request all of us, that let's let's not practice the kings and followers thinking. We start practicing ourselves. So the children, when they grow up, they will have that. That's why I said injection, so that they remember. So that's the best way to prevent from media. Because when we inject into the blood, no matter what it is, a media, it will not affect. So how strong injection of cultural diffusion of social construction of gender equality, that depends. It's a wonderful question, Dr. Nilimaji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Exactly. I feel media is secondary. The first teacher is actually at home. So if the roots are strong enough for a child when he ventures out and gets exposed to the world of media, obviously media will not be able to affect that much.
Right.
Right. Sir, I have another question.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think that we have failed to inculcate the ethics relating to basic human rights of individuals in our children, both at home and in schools? Is this factor a reason that the issue of gender inequality has not been addressed till date and perhaps will not without mass sensitization?
I beg to differ this question, we have failed. No, we never failed. See, one of the reasons why our society is facing this kind of challenges, we tend to teach our children from home the negative aspect of life. We tend to teach our children pessimistic. We should teach them more optimistic, more positive. So we shouldn't say failed, that we failed to achieve. No, rather we did not take enough initiatives. And when I say enough initiative, that as I said, in the beginning of children, when we are teaching them, that teaching nowadays has become like a memorization, has become like parents are saying, okay, let me see your grade book. What grade you have got in this? Instead of that one, how we can inculcate the positive thinking. Not that, oh, you are daughter, you are women, once you are married away, we are gone. So that thinking process need to change. So it is not failed. We rather have to practice, whether women is married or not married, whether men, when a son doesn't do good, most of the parents, the percentage, they get demotivated, and when they get demotivated, they tend to talk to the children in a demotivated of nature. So what need to be done, Dr. Niloji, that our people, instead of fail, rather I would say that we have to take more effort, more initiatives, that how this gender equity can be. And again, education, not like book. Ramakrishna said, Paravidya and Aparavidya. And those who can understand, so we need to have Aparavidya, the knowledge which creates man-making education, not money-making education. The moment we try to give to our children a money-making education, then all these gender equity, gender, and etc. So we need to give the injection man-making education, as Swami Vivekananda would often say, that man-making education will clear all these social confusion and etc. Thank you, Dr. Niluji.
Exactly. It's disheartening to know that there are only 6 matriarchal societies in the world, and the rest of the world still practices patriarchy. But yes, man making education is definitely going to be like a light. If we really practice it that way, I'm sure we are able to achieve what we target for. Another question from a participant, sir. Sir, is it normal to get harsh reviews or rejection based on your ethnicity or gender?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Normal to get harsh reviews or rejection based on your ethnicity or gender?
That's how the culture has been built. But that's why our injection of education from the very beginning, we have to tell people, my children, that look, when criticize people, you don't say they are your enemy. You don't say they are putting you down. I look at that harsh review is a blessings in disguise. The people are testing you, your tolerance, your patience, that how you can overcome such harsh review. So, and that has happened. That is what is happening nowadays throughout the world, throughout the society. And that's why I want all of you to go back ground zero. Teach our children. Let them criticize me. I give a damn, which I often say, I give a damn if I know myself consciously, I am doing right thing, get lost everyone. So this kind of training, the consciousness, the honesty and understanding, that need to be built in our social education. Then the person who is criticizing now, that person will stop. That person who is giving harsh review or whatever may be, because he or she does not have that kind of education. If he or she has given that kind of injection, I don't think that person will do. So what we need to teach our children or teach our society, that look, if anybody criticizes you, and that's what I always say, you are your best friend and you are your best enemy. So if somebody is criticizing you on the basis of gender, and if you perceive those words in a very pessimistic way, you are mentally stressed. You are mentally suffocating. So it is your perception how a person is delivering. And I like to quote Swami Vivekananda in one of the lecture. He said that, look, when somebody is criticizing you, if somebody tells you stupid, let's spell it out. STUPID. Now, then he said, take out S. Does it make any sense? Stupid. Okay. Then you take out T. Then what happens? Upid. Does it have any sense? So what he said, that if you find any time that kind of sentences are really attacking your head, creating stress, sit down, write down those sentences, what they have written, and take out one alphabet and understand the meaning. And if you will see at the end, it has no meaning at all. So perception of an individual need to be taught from the very beginning, as long as I know who am I. So this kind of pessimistic thought process, this kind of ideas need to be eliminated, and we will be equal. Thank you. If you have some more, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying myself.
There's not a question, but yes, Dr. Samina mentions that if you look at the matriarchal society of Khasi people in India, we see that the men are often at the receiving end, and men play the role reversal here, and they are at the receiving end. So it's the matriarchal society at play over here.
I have, by the way, I was there in Khasi in Meghalaya.
Okay.
I went there.
So
I mean,
you have any experiences from there that you can share with us?
You see, I'm a cultural anthropologist, my first master degree, and I flew to Guwahati, and then Guwahati, that was 82 or 83 perhaps, and the roads were very narrow, and had to go to Cherrapunji. And from that Cherrapunji, I couldn't speak the Khasi language. So I had to accompany with a monk who could speak Khasi language. And he took me there. And first of all, this Khasi society, a group of family, and they treated me like I'm a revered guy, because I went with a monk, and monk normally doesn't go easily if. So one lady, young lady, could speak a little broken English. And her first question, why did you come here? First question, why did you come here? Do you want to take away our mother, our sister? That's the fear they have always. Okay. Always.
They are not very welcoming, or is it that they do not welcome men in their amidst?
Men.
Okay.
Men. But because I went with a monk, so I was very much welcome, because they do lots of social work and so forth. So I said, no, I want to observe how all of you behave. And I had a plan to stay with them for 3 nights. The monk said, they will never allow you to live within their society. So I didn't say. So somehow or other, she said, wait, I asked my mother. She went. She came back after half an hour with 10 group of women, with 10. And they wanted to see who am I. And these 10 is from various age groups. Various age groups. They looked at me. And that young girl only could converse with me. Rest of them, they were looking at me completely from like everybody is looking at. I could see everybody's eye, you know what I'm saying? Then they were talking in their language. They said, what you will do for 3 nights, for 3 days? I said, I'm a cultural anthropologist. I just want to observe. I don't want to do anything. Whatever you do. Then they said, oh, and those days their houses are not that so aristocrat. The house used to be very, very below quality type. He said, how you will sleep here? So I always used to carry a sleeping bag all the time. I said, I have my sleeping bag. wherever it is, I'll sleep. And Cherrapunji, the rainfall is very, very, highest rainfall. So monk had to go back, and I stayed there for 3 nights. And I tell you,
it means that the matriarchal societies are well aware of the fact that the rest of the world is not like them. And since they are the majority, they might want to change the way they live.
yes.
Probably that's the reason why they are a bit hesitant in allowing people to be with them, interact with them.
For the kind of enthusiasm
they do not
that
know the language.
Okay. Can I just say a few words here, ma'am?
Yes,
sure.
Yes, sir, the kind of enthusiasm that I could and happiness that I could see on your face, recalling the your experiences there. I've myself stayed almost 16 years in Shillong, so I've literally just loved the place. I love the people; they're wonderful, and that is something which I cherish. That everyone that I meet, who has even once gone to those places in the Northeast, they have great reverence, respect, and happiness with what they keep recalling it. And each time they get an opportunity, they're happy to do so. So it's a beautiful place, beautiful people. Yet when you think about the state of men, you feel that yes, even they are, it's not easy to be a man in that society, just as we could say in the North, it's not easy to be a woman perhaps in these societies. So that's definitely there. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I feel the statement that I read before I joined this particular webinar, that gender is socially constructed unlike biological sex. But the fact is that if society determines what is masculine or feminine, then society can change what is considered masculine, feminine, or anything in between. So it's for, like how you mentioned, sir, it's for us, the society, the people who constitute the society, to ensure that there is equality and there is no irrational differentiation of gender. So if there's any other question, any other participant would like to ask, you can post in the chat box. As of now, there are no other questions, sir.
Nilu ma'am, shall I share a couple of my experiences?
Yes, sir, very true.
My mother had 5 sisters. And whenever I used to stay with my masis, I used to receive same kind of love as I used to get love and care from my mother and sister, elder sister. So I have grown up among 6 masis and with mother, and I never found any difference between a mother and a masi. And even my 2 masis are alive, and I never felt that I have lost my mother. So there is a great impact of, we can say, matriarchy as far as social upbringing of my person is concerned. So whenever I see any female gender, I become very emotional. And I can associate with them the kind of care and love that I got from my mother, from my sister, and I want to reciprocate and want to give the same love and affection to each and every female gender I will meet in the future also. So I'm greatly indebted to each of them who has played a very significant role in shaping, my persona.
So that's a very emotional moment we can feel in your voice. And that is how we've seen you. Though, as somebody had mentioned, that teaching profession, we have more number of women teachers. But here in BTTC, we are, yes, we are the majority. Out of 9, we are 6 women and 3 men. So yes, though they are less in number, but yes, we've seen Sir always being a part of all of us, and there's never ever any discrimination that we've seen at the workplace. I've been with Sir, personally, I've been with Sir for the last 12 years, but then yes, we've seen you, Sir, that you have that passion, and the way that you even interact with your women colleagues or your students is like, we feel very comfortable when we are amidst you. So that's how it is. So there are still no more questions. I may hand over the session to Dr. Sambita. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us this evening. And thank you so much for giving us your so valuable time. And
thank you, Dr. Nilaji.
Opinions with us on the topic.
Thank you.
Over to you, Sambita ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Neelu. Now, friends, we have come to the end of this faculty development program. Now, I would quickly culminate the outcome of this program that we have since morning been attending. In this FDP, we had 6 technical sessions with 6 resource persons from different countries coming from different cultural backgrounds. Now, each and every speaker had appropriately discussed the topic assigned to him and have justified their role as the resource person in this faculty development program. I wish to quickly outline in brief, though it was already done with some of the speakers after they had had their session, but I would quickly outline some very few points in brief, their views which they have shared on this particular topic, namely social construction of gender. To quickly start with the first speaker, we had Dr. Asha Bajpai, who actually went on to explain to us what is the meaning or difference between sex and gender. Then she went about to speak about the laws in support of women's rights. She touched upon certain judgments which are gender biased, along with discriminatory personal laws that we have in our country. She took up gender equality in today's world. She even showed us a couple of videos, on showing the changing roles between the two genders, how past things were and how in future things were. She touched upon some very pertinent judgments of Supreme Court and High Court, landmark judgments, which are in favor of the women of the society. And finally, she advised us on becoming more aware on gender equality. The second session was taken by Dr. Peter Cunningham, where he focused on the current value system and the way society operates. He focused on the necessity of accepting change in the contemporary world, imbalance of power in the society, optimizing core potential of every person. He also spoke about the impediments that India and South Africa face regarding stereotyping women in the society. He analyzed the problems which women in South Africa are facing by not being aware of their rights or not coming forward and report their problems. He also referred to current scenarios in South Africa where the girls get pregnant and they have child during the teens and discuss the concerns of these young teenagers. However, he also gave certain solutions regarding the how we can improve the society, that how we can live by an example. He focused on the right to equality. He spoke about discrimination, which needs to be checked and balanced. And he also, with all the other solutions that he was trying to put up before all of us, he also put up the need to address the negative stereotype in order to reconstruct the gender issues. The third technical session we had with Fulvia Abondante. Now here, she took us and explained the construction of gender in Italian experience and highlighted the role of culture, religion, and law. She focused on women's right from the Roman age to Middle Age, 17th century, the Illuminous period, where idea of equality came up only after the French Revolution. She also focused on the position of women, which were started to be improved in the 19th century. She spoke about the Italian constitution and she highlighted the important features of the constitution. However, at the end, at one point of time, she also focused that with all these changes which are happening in her country on gender issues, she also at some point of time stated that Italy is not a place for women. Their legislations are there, but they are not sufficient and they still need to work more on uplifting the status of the women in the country. Thereafter, we had the fourth session where we had Michael Ensor. He took us through various kinds of media which are prevalent in Canada and their role. At the same time, he also highlighted that how his country is a liberal country with multicultural over there. However, he also highlighted some very pertinent problems pertaining to gender, like pink taxes, gender wage gap, which exists over there. He spoke about the tasks that are assigned to gender and discussed recent data on gender inequality. and he really hoped that things would improve in future as an educationist, if he could see that. Thereafter, we had Kathy Lewis, ma'am, where she spoke about the intersectionality of gender and Black death. She focused more on the inequality which is faced by the Black people in Canada and US, and she took us through the Black history, how Black bodies are criminalized, how gender complicates that experience. She also spoke about the problems of the marginalized Black community in Canada and US, spoke about Black women's plight over there, and also referred to certain cases and showed us some videos. And she was predominantly, apart from the gender issues in the country, she was focusing more on the racism against Black men and women in her country. Thereafter, last but not the least, we have Dr. Amir Bhomik, who started with a very beautiful concept of the United Nations 5 Sustainable Development Goals, where he explained those concepts to us. And thereafter, he took us to the status of women, how the status of women were many centuries back, and today how the rules have been changing, and today what is the scenario in most of the countries. And he also touched upon the 6 matriarchal societies which are prevalent in the world. He focused that even even after so much of progression in terms of time since centuries or decades, still to a large extent, to very many places, women are still viewed as an object in this patriarchal society. He spoke about gender equality has to start from our family and not from outside our houses. He gave us a lot of wisdom words, by quoting Swami Vivekananda, and his words and his speech was, it was falling more like it was a spiritual speech, with such a serene face that he has, and the way he has put it up was beautiful, and it absolutely made us think that are we living in a society where there is no gender bias and we all are equal. So these were the 6 speakers who had narrated and who had tried to touch upon to the maximum extent the topic which was assigned to them, and the topic of deliberation, that was the social construction of gender. So as a moderator, I feel that they have done a wonderful task, and they have touched upon everything, and they had brought about their culture through this particular topic. And we had seen a very broad view of this gender issues, not just in India, which we all know, which we all kind of, being lawyers, we know, but we have also had a very sneak peek view of this issue or from the world perspective. So these were some of the observations that I had while going through. Of course, it's not possible to go through everything, but I think these were some of the observations that I had. Neelu ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So now this is I have moderated. Now, do you wish me to proceed further to the last segment for the day, that is proposing a vote of thanks?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
If Neelima ma'am has to say something, or Balani sir, if they would like to see.
Yes, yes, please.
No, I think we have had a very brilliant exposition of the topic, and I profusely thank the battery of experts that we have had. Each one of them, Asha Bajpai, Professor Peter Cunningham, Professor Fulvia, then Mike, Kathy, and of course, Professor Bhomik. A very big thank you to all. And I would also like to thank BTTC for thinking of joining with us, and the entire team and the student volunteers. And of course, the formal vote of thanks can be given by Samvita Datta.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now, since you have thanked each and every person, resource person today, at BTTC family, we all are enriched with the topic, because Neelu ma'am is teaching this topic. Dr. Raju Talreja has been teaching this topic. Dr. Lubna Mansoori and myself have taught this topic, and this topic is very close to our heart. And a lot of learning is taking place, and we will definitely multiply this positive message among our all teachers whom we are going to train, whom we have been training. It was a wonderful experience today with you all and with your blessings. Now you are a very senior colleague of mine, and many things we have learned. All the faculty members of Bombay Teachers Training College have learned from you, and we assure you that we will put into the practice, and we will try our level best to reach out to each and every member of the society, and would like to see a change, a very positive change in them. Thank you to one and all. Over to Sambita ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. So, with the last thing for the day, a formal vote of thanks, because without this, we cannot come to the end. So, good evening to everyone present with us for the Faculty Development Program on Social Construction of Gender. It is said that feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. It is a great privilege for me to express warm and sincere thanks on behalf of Hyderabad Sindh National Collegiate Board, Nari Gursahani Law College, and Bombay Teachers Training College at the end of this day-long faculty development program. We are especially pleased to be able to hold this international FDP and bring together all of you from various parts of the country and the world to discuss, deliberate, and understand the social construction of gender. At the start, I my gratitude to all the wonderful panelists or resource persons from different countries who agreed to share their valuable time and knowledge with us and join us on this platform. I'm extremely thankful to the distinguished academician Dr. Asha Bajpai for enlightening us on the topic with her knowledge and expertise in this area of gender study. I also extend a heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Peter Cunningham of Nelson Mandela University, South Africa. A big thank you to Flavia Abundante from University of Naples. I'm grateful to Michael Ensaucer from Toronto District School Board. I express my deep sense of gratitude to Catherine Lewis ma'am from Toronto District School Board. And I also thank Amir Bhomik sir of Lincoln University College, Malaysia, for expressing his wonderful views on this topic for the day. I express my gratitude also to all the lovely participants for being there with us throughout the day, right from 10 a.m. to now 7 p.m. and being there with us throughout the day to be discussing and deliberating and learning on this particular very, very sensitive and important topic. I thank all the participants for showing such great interest and enthusiasm and being part of this session and making it such a successful one. Now, success of any kind depends upon the relentless work or effort of not one person, but many people. I am very grateful to the staff of Bombay Teachers Training College for the extended support in organizing this event and being there throughout, in making it such a successful one. I would fail in my duty, however, if I do not mention the constant and continuous support and vigilance which we have received from our respectable principals, Principal of Nari Gursahani Law College, Dr. Nilima Chandi Ramani, and Dr. Bhagwan Balani of BTTC College. Thank you so much, sir and ma'am, for planning, coordinating, and collaborating for so many days with all these people. And I know how difficult it was for all of you, to be matching up with their time, because we all live in different parts of the country. Thank you so much for being our backbone. Without you, I don't think so. The teachers, of both the colleges would have put up such a great show today. I thank all present here once again, and I wish everyone a good and healthy life. Please stay connected with all of us for all future endeavors. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Please put up the feedback form. Huh?
Yes. So we will be putting it up. Yes, ma'am. We will be sending you the feedback form. We would request you to, at the earliest, please fill the feedback form, and we'll try to send the certificates as early as we can. So with this, it over for the last word to Neelu ma'am or Meenakshi ma'am. I guess they are not there. So the last word from you, Balani sir. Let the last word for the day be from you, and with that we will wind up the event.
Thank you, Sambita.
She's
It's
there.
been a
Yes.
real lovely journey throughout the day, and it was a pleasure listening to our luminaries from across borders, as well as the moderators were really fantastic. It was really lovely coordinating with you all on this event.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I am also there. Thank you so much, Sambita ma'am and Nilima ma'am. I've been listening throughout the day and good reflections, very well moderated sessions. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Ma'am, we can have one thing. Can we switch on our videos and then can have a group photograph?
I wouldn't know how to do that. You will have to guide me.
Thank you,
Yes.
Nilima ma'am, for the wonderful experience.
So
It was
all of you,
really
please-
new learnings, new
was my
experience
pleasure.
altogether.
All of you, please switch on your video so that we can have group photograph on Zoom.
What, we switch off or switch on? What is
Switch
it?
on, switch on, ma'am. Ranjit sir, I will request you to take the photographs as a memory.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Both the colleges. Kavita ma'am is there. Kavita ma'am.
Is everyone on?
Yes, Kavita ma'am, over to you.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Lovely.
Very good evening, ma'am.
Brilliant sessions we had today.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, being with us, supporting.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Lovely it was.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. May I say something about the program?
Yes, please.
John Keats said, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." Today's program was such a beauty that it gave me a sublime joy, and that is what makes the day a perfect day. A good thing, well begun, always ends well. The conversation and especially the experiences of all the dignitaries gave us a good insight that still many endeavors need to be taken for changing the eon-old traditions. The topic was really, really very well taken, and the program was very well organized. Congratulations, especially to both Principal Madam and Sir. Thank you so much for organizing such program. Thank you.
Nilima ma'am, we shall not forget our management, the provost, Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, our president, Kushu Mansukhani, Maya ma'am, for always being with us, supporting, blessings, participating, and motivating all of us to take up new endeavors. So we are also thankful to them for their constant and unconditional support, ma'am.
Definitely, but I want to say something to what Dr. Batul Hamid has said. You don't know what your words mean to us, You have really motivated us to doing something more. Really, these words mean a lot because we have been working since a long time. So when I heard you, I really felt it was worthwhile doing everything. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, myself, Dr. Batul Hamid, Principal of Viva College of Law, Virar.
Oh, it was wonderful having you. And you really won't know what your words mean to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Nice program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Principal Balani. It was wonderful. All's well that ends well.
Yes,
thank you
thank
for
you.
all
Thank
your
you, ma'am.
support. And
Yes.
I thank your entire team and all your
Fantabulous program, ma'am. Fantabulous, wonderful.
Thank
Very
you,
nice.
Sanjana.
Absolute
And I'm so
thumbs
happy.
up. Absolute thumbs up.
Thank you, you were with us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
ma'am.
nice evening, all of you.
Congratulations to everyone, ma'am.
Vaishali,
Yes.
is it Vaishali?
Yes, ma'am. This is
Very
Vaishali.
good. Yeah, I did see your name, of course, and your interactions also.
I
Thank you,
just hope
Vaishali.
we have half as much as the energy when we are of your age, ma'am.
My age.
Wonderful.
You will have double.
Thank you.
You will
And
have
such a grand program, especially with different time zones. I mean, hats off to all the organizers. Very
You
well
don't know how much
organized.
I have troubled them, again and again changing the times. especially Canada, because it's 9.5 hours ahead of us.
ma'am.
But they were so cooperative and so accommodative, ready for all changes.
Yes, ma'am.
But you all have made it a grand success for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Excellently organized. Now
Thank
you may
you.
have a good night's sleep, all of you.
Oh, no, I'm having a very big program tomorrow with
Okay.
Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas on
Yes,
Tata.
yes, I'm aware. Yeah, 25th.
So I don't think tomorrow I'll be able to rest.